Hey now everyone, my name is Nick, and today we're going to take a look at On Shifting Winds, which is the second expansion for Darkest Night. For those of you that don't know, Darkest Night is a really cool cooperative game from Victory Point Games. It doesn't get a lot of attention or a lot of love, and I think that's because most people associate Victory Point games with really complex war games and solitaire games, and also games with really bad components. I really can't apologize for the components in Darkest Night. They're not that great. They're certainly not up to, say, Fantasy Flight Games cooperative game standards, but they're not that bad, and I think the artwork in the game is really, really good. And as far as the gameplay itself in Darkest Night, I mean, you can go and check out my review of it and the first expansion with an Inner Light, but in brief, to me, it almost replaces Pandemic. It gives me the same feel as Pandemic with the tension and the difficulty, but with a much better theme. I much prefer the fantasy theme of you are a group of heroes going around trying to stop a necromancer from destroying the lands. To me, that's much more accessible, but I keep Pandemic because the theme is generally more accessible to new gamers of like a pandemic going around, a viral pandemic going around the world, spreading. It's something that's much more relatable because it takes place in the modern day. As opposed to, you know, fantasy and wizards and sorcerers. That's not everybody's cup of tea, and I totally realize that. So I keep Pandemic around for now, but I don't have much of a desire to play it so long as I have Darkest Night. Now, the first expansion for the game with an Inner Light added a lot of new stuff. It added new cards for all the decks, new heroes, which were all really cool, but most importantly, it added a brand new mechanic, which was the quest deck, which added a lot of depth and strategy to the game. Much more decision-making took place and things that you could go around and do. You go for the quest, which could help you out a lot if you succeed on them, but they're taking your focus away from the main task of getting the keys and getting the relics and trying to defeat the necromancer. But if you ignore them, it's going to empower the necromancer. So that was a cool little thing that was added. Now, the new expansion that we're talking about today, On Shifting Winds, does not add any drastic rules changes or new mechanics like the quest deck, but it does add more characters, all of which are pretty unique and cool. I thought they were kind of running out of ideas, but they came out with some cool ones for this. And also more cards for the artifact deck, the map deck, the event deck. That's all pretty cool. But most importantly, it adds more blights to the game, new blights to the game. Blights are the evil things that the necromancer drops around the map. It could be monsters, it could just be evil auras and evil circles, things like that. But it trips up the heroes, it makes the necromancer harder to defeat, and it could eventually lead to the heroes losing the game. But there wasn't a ton of variety in the blights that came with the base game, and with an Inner Light, the first expansion didn't add any new ones. So very happy to see those in this set. But before we go any further, let's go ahead and do a brief overview of just the new stuff that comes with the set. I'm not going to explain the whole game again. Then we're going to come back and I'll tell you if this is worth your time if you like Darkest Night. Okay, I'm not going to go over the actual gameplay of Darkest Night itself. I'm just going to show you the new stuff that comes in the On Shifting Winds expansion. This adds new characters, which is always a good thing. It also adds new cards for each of the different decks, like the event deck, the map deck, the artifact deck, and of course the characters each have their own deck of cards and their special powers that they have. It adds some new dice if you get the box edition of the game, because you can have the option of buying just, you know, the essential components or buying a box edition. You will actually get some new dice, which, I mean, there's nothing special about them, but the game does need more dice, that's for sure. And of course, little standees for the guys as well. We'll go through all of that different stuff. But probably the most important thing that comes with this expansion is new blights, which are going to add some more variety to the Necromancer's arsenal. So let's go through what each of these do. You have the Crow Blight, which says that at the end of each turn in the affected location, a hero must combat a crow, which is just a different type of creature that's going to try to stumble them up. But the bad part is that you actually lose secrecy, which is a cool thing that some of the other monsters don't do if you fail against them. Omens, whenever a hero in the affected location draws an event, they draw an extra card and discard the one with the lowest fate. You may not have even noticed this before, but each of the event cards has a fate number, and the higher the fate number, the worse it is. So that's a bad thing. Webs can be very annoying. A hero that's in the affected location loses a turn. That leaves the affected location loses a turn. So you're hunkered down if you're in an area with webs, unless you are okay with losing a turn. Decay is even worse. Items have no effect. That includes the relics. So long as the decay is on the board, their items can do nothing, and this affects all locations. So that's a really bad one. This is my favorite. I really think this is, especially since I played a game as the Necromancer, and this was just the coolest thing for me to have. When you have the gate, the Necromancer adds 1 to his movement. And by the way, this blight affects all locations. He adds 1 to his movement for detecting the heroes, and if he does detect any, he gets to teleport to the location of a random detected hero. So that is just really terrifying for the heroes. Revenants are just a different type of monster that can be really bad. Same thing with the Specters, which are these things here. And Oblivion is kind of nasty because each turn that a hero is there in a location that has an Oblivion, they have to exhaust one of their power cards if it's possible. So not a ton of new blights, but enough to add some much needed variety to the Necromancer's little bag of tricks there. You have some new little items that you can find throughout the map deck, and of course, it includes new items, or I'm sorry, new map cards, so that you might actually run into some of these new blights and try to potentially get these items. So you have a Soothing Lyre that you can discard at any time to refresh all of your powers of all heroes. Then you have the Tome of Retraining, lets you discard to put one of your power cards at the top of your deck so that you can draw 2 power cards, keeping both of them. That's really powerful. And the Charm lets you discard it after you make a die to re-roll all the dice that you just rolled. So that is super good as well. Now, like I said, you also have new characters in the game, and that's going to be the main draw for most people. And all of these are a lot more unique, it seems, than some of the others. The Wind Dancer has some really cool powers that kind of, hence the name, it relies on the power of the wind, which can be very fickle. So if you were to look at some of her different power cards here, for instance, Hurricane, which you exhaust it to roll 3 winds dice, and these wind dice will basically tell you the different varying amount of effects, but of course it's entirely up to the dice whether or not you get these effects or not. So if you happen to roll a 6, you get to destroy a blight not at the Necromancer's location. If you roll a 5, you move a blight anywhere. So that's a really neat idea of moving blights around. Another example, the Tempest is going to give you extra wind dice whenever you would be called to roll the wind dice. The Cyclone, you can immediately roll a die and place one on this card as immediate action. And after you roll wind dice, but before resolving their effects, you can swap one of them with a die on this card. Another example of a card that actually uses the wind dice. Tactics, roll a wind die, then elude with 1 die. And then whatever you come up with, you might be able to refresh a power, get an automatic success, gain a die. All these cool, neat things that are random, but you're almost guaranteed to get something good. It just might not be what you expected. Then you have the Wayfarer here, who has some really kind of weird powers that can be very, very powerful if used in the right way. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of his cards. So for instance, the Guiding Star. If it's inactive at the start of your turn, you activate in a random location that is not the monastery. Active. Deactivate after you search successfully in that location to gain a treasure chest in addition to whatever you gain there. In the Wind, you get to elude with 3 dice if there are no other heroes at your location. So it kind of encourages him to go solo. Walkabout, deactivate when you end a turn in that location to gain 2 of the grace up to your default level. I always forget what that grace symbol is called. Spirit of Discovery, deactivate before a search roll for +2 dice. Traveler's Luck, deactivate after making any die roll to re-roll it. So lots of neat stuff here. Encourages him to kind of go off on his own and definitely to search as well. You have the Ranger, who, much like he says, he likes to go around, shoot things with arrows, and possibly poison them as well. So let's take a look at some of his powers. You have Track, exhaust to travel, and then search. Pathfind, exhaust to move yourself and any number of heroes at your location to one adjacent location. Each gains a secrecy. That is really powerful. We use that in one of our games. Forgotten Waves, +2 dice when searching in the ruins. Let me find the Poison Arrow. Here we go. Poison Arrow. Fight with 3 dice. If the highest die equals the target number, you both succeed and fail the roll. So you get to roll a lot of dice, but it could potentially backfire on you. And one more. We'll look at Race the Hare. You elude with 2 dice. If you roll a die, you must move to an adjacent location. I'm sorry, if you roll a 6. And finally, we'll take a look at the Scout, who's got some of the cool, I just love that art on the Scout. All this artwork is really, really cool. But the Scout, much as the name implies, it has to do with a lot of movement. Actually, that's what most of the heroes in this game, this expansion, have to do with. So, Trailblazer. Any hero in an adjacent location may travel to your location as a free action. Patrol routes. Blights at a location have no effects. Deactivate and exhaust at the end of the round. Shelters. Heroes there at a location do not experience events. Deactivate and exhaust at the end of the round. Just one more at random. Speed. Elude with 1 die and add 1 to your highest die. Exhaust after rolling to add 2 to your highest die instead of adding 1. So Lots of cool abilities, lots of movement affected things. You have some new event cards as well. You have Mind Blast, spend 1 grace or exhaust all of your powers. Again, if you're not really familiar with the game, these are bad things that are going to happen to the heroes. Twilight, compared to the Darkness track, you might have to exhaust a power or lose a secrecy. Spend a secrecy or lose a grace, or spend a grace or gain a darkness. That's really awful. Dust Storm, you gain 2 secrecy, but you must spend a grace or lose a turn. The Mind Leech. If you compare it to your secrecy, and however that is, it's either young, mature, or strong, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. Forbidden Treasure, you lose a grace, roll a die, and pick one of these, draw an artifact, gain a bottled magic, or, it could be really, really good, but you do lose a grace. Here's a cool one, the Barghest. Really nasty creature, you might get wounded and have to lose a grace, or if you fail to lose, you at least lose secrecy. And we'll just take a look at one more, that's Host of Haunts. Compared to your secrecy, you might have to fight wisps, ghosts, or phantoms, some really nasty things. And finally, we'll take a look at some artifacts because there are some cool ones. The Black Pearl. You may perform 1 additional action during the action step of your turn, but if you do, you lose a turn. So that can still be really good if you just need to do something in a hurry. The Seeing Glass. Keep the top card of every deck in the game face up. You exhaust before drawing a card to search the deck for the card of your choice. That is extremely powerful. The Cloak of Air, you may move to the monastery instead of losing or spending grace or secrecy. That's super duper cool. The Chalice of Life. At the start of your turn, you may roll 1 die. If you roll a 5 or higher, you gain a grace up to 9. And we'll take a look at one more. The Crown of Shadow. At the start of your turn, you may roll a die. If you roll a 4 or higher, you gain a secrecy up to 7. So just lots of extra stuff to the game. Nothing new or groundbreaking, but just lots more of what you hopefully already love about the game. That is On Shifting Winds, the newest expansion for Darkest Night. Well, like I said in my intro, it's not that there's anything drastically new in On Shifting Winds. Certainly not to the degree that the first expansion did. If you're only going to buy one expansion for this game, then definitely it's the first one because of that quest deck. But if you're already into this game, if you like it the way that I like it, or even, mostly like I like it a lot, then you should get this anyways, because first off, the game needs more attention. It needs more support. I want to see even more stuff come out for this game. I want to see a nice collector's edition, Victory Point Games has started putting their stuff up on Kickstarter, which is a fantastic idea, so let me see a version of Darkest Night with miniatures. That would be cool. So that's a selfish reason why I think you should check this out. But if you like the game, a legitimate reason is that, first off, it's always good to have more characters, more variety. Every character comes with its own set of powers. They're all unique. That's one of the things I love about the game, is a variety of powers and the things you can do. And this just adds more. The Wind Dancer is, kind of weird, but super cool. The Hermit, I'm blanking on the name for some reason right now, but the Nomadic Traveling guy has some really crazy powers that I kind of think are overpowered, but hey, if you're the hero, that's fine. I mean, if you're playing the fully cooperative version, then no problem. I mean, who cares about overpowered cards? I mean, the game is hard enough as it is. The Ranger is cool. I can't believe the Ranger wasn't already in the game. All the heroes in this game are pretty cool. I can't complain about them at all. It's just more variety, cool new stuff. There's a hero for everybody at this point. The new event cards, artifact cards, I mean, look, it's tough to. I've played several games of this now, a lot of games of Darkest Night, and we never went through all the original artifacts. I don't think I've never seen all of them, so those things weren't strictly necessary. But like I said in the beginning of this video, the best thing here is more blights, and really funky, cool blights, like the gate power. Oh man, that is really cool. Jumping around the map for the Necromancer, because I do think the game is really tough, but if you played it as many times as I have, it can get kind of rote, and the things that you do, it could. I hesitate to use this expression, but it can start to feel like you've solved the game, because the best, most efficient way to do things, to move around the map, what to focus on, the blights to focus on most importantly. But now with these new ones thrown in that can get kind of crazy and very tough, I think it adds a lot to the game. It just does. I said that I probably meant to say that Darkest Night was complete with the first expansion, that it felt like more of a complete game. And I'm not going to retract that. If you can only get one expansion, that's the one to get, and you will be perfectly happy. I think you'd still be mostly happy with just the base game, but with that first expansion, you're solid gold. But if you really love the game, this second expansion is really cool. It's cool to have more variety. It's cool to have more blights. I think this game just needs more attention. I don't know what it is. I don't know why people aren't talking about it, don't care about it. It's got to have something to do with the components, and that's sad. And like I said, I wish that... I love the artwork in this game. It is so good. I just love it, and I would love to see it come to life with, miniatures. Take the same characters, because all the characters look cool and unique. And I want the board to look better and more vibrant, more full of life. And that's something that could even add more content to the game, have more unique stuff going on in each location. Have story scenarios for the game. There's a lot that could be added to the game that might seem superficial, but sometimes superficial things can really help out a game and just bring it more attention that it desperately needs. So I don't mean to digress and get into a components versus mechanics argument here or something like that, but the mechanics of this game are great. It just needs that extra little oomph for people to take notice of it and for it to really hit its stride. I do think it's one of the, this is purely anecdotal from me, but I do think it's one of the better selling games for Victory Point Games, and I hope that they give it even more attention so that it kind of cracks through that wall and it becomes as generally popular with gamers as some of the games from Fantasy Flight. I mean, that's all I'm saying. I want this to be seen as one of the top tier cooperative games. I certainly hope that it does. I envision this being on my top 10 cooperative games list for quite some time to come whenever I do a new iteration. My name is Nick. This has been the review of On Shifting Winds, even though I talked about a lot of other stuff. And I'm reminding you to get out there and game every day in every way. Take care.